Hey, Jacob here, coming to you live from the shop floor at Cutthroat Anglers today. Going to take a look at tying some tungsten hare's ear nymphs using the tungsten hare's ear nymph tying kit that we have available on our web store, or right here actually in our store. For this hare's ear, I'm going to start off with the size 14 TMC 921 hook and use a 7/64 inch gold tungsten bead to go with that hook. Here you can see one of our finished hare's ears from the kit. Let's go ahead and start a fresh one. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is grab some .015 lead wire. I'm going to get a few wraps of this wire onto the hook shank. Go ahead and push it up into that bead. I normally do a few wraps back over itself again to kind of create a little bit of a taper. Use your fingernail, knock off that extra wire. Then I'm gonna use the wood duck colored ultra thread that we have available in this kit, and that's ultra thread 140 denier. I'm going to tie that in right behind that lead wire. Gently do a couple wraps over the wire, get it locked in there before you really crank on it. Now we're going to tie in our tail material, which is going to be some mottled turkey feather. You can select tips here that are going to be darker gray. There's tips that are going to be lighter, so keep that in mind when you're selecting your feather pieces. I'm going for a grayer segment here. Don't want your tails too long with these hare's ears. Measure out your tail. Get that tied in. Keep it on top of the hook shank as you work that tail backwards. With the hare's ears, I don't really like to get into the bend of the hook too much. Next thing we're going to do is tie in our ribbing material, which in the hare's ear is going to be French tinsel. I'm going to use this Vivus French tinsel, really nice stuff. Get a little section of that snipped off. Make sure you leave it long enough that you can comfortably wrap it forward. We're going to tie it in just like we did the tail. I like to tie everything in a little bit closer to the bead so that you keep a consistent body thickness as you tie everything in. Same thing, work that French tinsel backwards to the tail tie-in point. Once you have your tail material and your French tinsel tied in, next step is to create a little dubbing rope that we're going to use to make the abdomen of this hare's ear nymph. I'm going to use a split thread technique to make this dubbing rope, but definitely don't need to do that. You can just apply a little bit of dubbing right onto the thread. Our dubbing just going to be some natural hare's ear colored dubbing. I'm going to use this special Cutthroat Anglers hare's ear dubbing blend that we made here at the shop. So there you can see I got my thread opened up, so I'm going to actually put the dubbing inside there and twist it up. Like I said, you could just put the dubbing straight onto the thread and twist it up that way. Not going to need too much dubbing here, just a little pinch. That's probably more than I need right there. And for this dubbing rope, I like to get it pretty tight so that it's going to create a little bit of a segmented look as you wrap it. And we're going to want to get that wrapped up to about the three-quarter mark of the hook shank there towards the bead. One thing I like to do is trim it up a little bit, clean up those straggly fibers. and I make sure that I'm cutting it in that taper I was talking about. Alright, now we're going to wrap our French tinsel forward to create that rib I was talking about. Just want to get pretty even spacing on the wraps. Make sure you leave dubbing in between each wrap. And tie that off right where you stop the dubbing there at the 3/4 mark on that hook shank. Tie off your French tinsel and snip the extra. Now we're going to start on our wing case. You could go with just a natural turkey feather wing case, or you could go with a flashback wing case. For this one, I am going to go with the flashback wing case. I often fish the hare's ear as a caddis pupa, which are typically they create a good bit of light in the water as they're emerging, basically little air bubbles. So good to have a little bit of extra shine when you're imitating a caddis pupa. So this flashback material is going to come in just one big sheet, and from there you will cut a strip of it to whatever desired thickness you want, which basically you want to try to match something close to the width of the back of the nymph. Take your strip, tie that in right on top of your nymph. And you want to get that tied down right back to that same tie-off point where you ended your dubbing and your tinsel, right at that 3/4 mark of the hook shank. Once your flashback is tied in, we're going to create another dubbing rope to make a ball for the thorax of the nymph right here. This part is it's also going to represent the legs of the nymph, so we want this dubbing rope to be a little bit looser, a little buggier than the last one. If you want, you can even brush your rope out a little bit if you want it to be a little looser. Something like that does pretty well for me. And you're just going to wind a little ball of dubbing right there in that spot in between the bead and your wing case material. I normally kind of pull these fibers back a little bit as I wrap forward. It's kind of hard to see right now with all the loose fibers, but you want kind of around the ball to be built there with that dubbing. Get rid of some of those loose fibers. Then we're going to pull our wing case forward and tie it off. I like to tie off that wing case right behind the bead, a couple wraps, then fold it back and do 1 or 2 more wraps to really lock it in there. Then I'll go ahead and whip finish right now and make sure nothing goes anywhere. Now that we have a whip finished, don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm going to trim my extra flash material. Try to get close to that thread there. And I'm going to go ahead and whip finish once more. Make it extra durable. And that is your hare's ear nymph. You can clean it up a little bit from there. Trim up any fibers that are a little bit too straggly, too out of there. Remember, you do want these to kind of look like the legs and anything else hanging off the bug, gills or whatever you might have. And there you have a perfectly good hare's ear nymph right there. I'm gonna go ahead and spice mine up a little bit with some Loon UV knot scents on that wing case. Just give it a little bit of extra amplification on that flashback. And once I have that UV resin where I want it, placing it with the bodkin, go ahead and cure it up with your UV light and call it done.